Boa tarde, pessoal. Bem-vindos a mais um Rascunhos Econômicos. Eu sou o Léo. Nesse canal nós tratamos a economia como ciência e a partir de agora eu vou falar apenas em inglês porque nós temos um convidado mais do que especial. Dear Professor Martin Schlag, is that did I pronounce it right, Professor?
Yeah, that's fine.
It's my honor to have you here. Thank you very much to accept my invitation. And before we start, I'd like to present you introduce you to our audience. Professor Monsignor Martin Schlag is the Alan W. Moss Endowed Chair for Catholic Social Thought at the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota. He holds doctorates in both law and moral theology and the previous taught social moral theology at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross in Rome. His research focuses on Catholic social teaching, economic ethics, and the relationship between markets and moral philosophy. He's the author and editor of several books, including the Handbook of Catholic Social Teaching, Humanism in Economics and Business, and the Business Francis Mean. He has also served as consultant to the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace at the Vatican. Professor, once again, thank you very much for accept our invitation to be here, and I would like to start. I would like to start with a question, Professor. What is for who is not Catholic? What do you think is the link between the Catholic ethics of economic and the normal person that maybe has a faith, maybe not, but just a normal citizen, let's say like that? What's the link between Catholic thoughts of social doctrine and the normal person?
That's a very good question, Leonardo. And first of all, let me say thank you for inviting me to speak. And I also greet everyone in the audience in Brazil or wherever in the world who's listening to this. So you know, the center of the economy is the human person, and every economist is an anonymous theologian. Every economist applies some conception of life. And that is both true when it comes to science as a empirical research and empirical science, as well as for business ethics and the business person who's applying that knowledge. Even the most practical person who thinks they are completely immune against theory will have to admit, like John Maynard Keynes said, that they are the slave of a defunct economist. Okay, so you always have implicit anthropologies that influence how you relate. So you can consider the market like a system just to exploit and to get rich, or you can see that it's an encounter between persons who are very special and who have dignity. And that is exactly the message of Catholic social thought. It has three big principles that go like a common thread through all the documents of the popes on the economy and on business, which is that business is part of a moral order. So there are laws of the markets, and in the background you can see I read Adam Smith. You can see his name on the back of the book. He's the father of political economics. So there are economic laws, but they are subject to moral laws. You cannot justify an evil decision by saying that is that's just economically necessary. Okay. The second is that the human person is at the center. It's the aim and the measure of economic activity, and not profit maximization. Right. So the church is okay with profit. You in business, you have to make money. You have to make profit. Otherwise, your business will not work. And so it is okay to pursue profit. It is also okay to increase profit, but it is not okay to increase profit at any cost. Uh, um, Exploiting people, uh, like ruining our environment and so on. And so we call that maximizing profit, which is something which can be misunderstood. Some people think that maximizing profit means increasing profit as much as possible. That's okay, but not at any cost. And the third, and maybe the most difficult to understand, is that the common good takes precedence, has priority over individual private interest. So what do we mean with that? The common good is realizing that we are all part of one society, that we are all connected and all linked together. We all depend on each other. And the reason why we have private property and why the church defends private property as a natural right is because that is better for the common good. We all know by experience that we take care of our own things better than we take care of the goods that don't belong to anyone. It's that's original sin. We have to count on fallen nature, right? And so when someone is able to uh, reap, to receive the fruits of their own work, they will make more effort. So you are incentivized by reward. And so private property has as result that it is better for everyone. However, God has created the world for everyone. It is not, we cannot take anything with us into the grave. Uh, we are responsible to others, right? So we always have to keep in mind that it is uh, that all profit, all private property, all our ownership is just something that God has entrusted to us. And so these three ideas that I have just mentioned, business is part of a greater moral order. The human person is at the center, and the common good takes precedence over private interest. That is something which anybody can accept. You don't even know, or recognize. You don't necessarily need a faith, but Christian faith teaches this, and in the figure of Christ, who gave himself right up to his death on the cross out of love, we have this very strong reminder that we need to give ourselves to others and be very responsible in an ethical sense.
So, Professor, for uh, in this doctrine in the Catholic social teaching, the economy is a tool for achieve the common good, not the goal of let's the study of economy, the models, all the numbers, econometry, everything that economists can deal with must not have the goal as maximization as of profit like in microeconomics, but the maximization of common good, what is better for everyone is that society. Is it a good way to say?
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. So, uh, on the other hand, we have to be wary of attempts to plan to of central planning. That in the history of the economy and of politics has not worked, because our markets and our societies are very complex, and we also want to be free. So freedom is a very important part of our human dignity, and we need both. We need a freedom of initiative, freedom of enterprise, freedom through private property, but not and responsibility, right? And we do also need law. We need laws. We need regulation, right? Um, but it's a balance. And I myself have visited, when they still existed, communist countries in Eastern Europe, behind the Iron Curtain, and I have experienced that it does not lead to heaven and earth to have central planning that tries to regulate every price, every product, everything that is produced. Okay, so when we speak of the common good, we are not talking of the imposition of some kind of notion of happiness, but we want to create the conditions in society that allow individuals and groups to flourish and to pursue their happiness, right, in a moral order. So I really like the economist Wilhelm Röpke. He published in the 1950s, and he said that free markets are a cultural achievement that depend very much on ethics and on spirituality and on law. It is a fragile good which can easily be destroyed as soon as you either stifle it through communist ideas, or you become immoral through egoistic, uh, parasitical behavior. That is, you suck everything out of the system for yourself, but you destroy the system. So in the end, everybody is worse off, including yourself, right? If you have a lake or a pond full of fish, you can throw in a stick of dynamite, and it explodes in the water. All the fish are dead. You have maximum catch, maximum profit, but you will never be able to fish again. And you have ruined the livelihood of all others around you. So I hope that answers your question.
See, perfectly. Professor, can you say once again the name of the economist from the 50s?
Yes, he's called Wilhelm. That is
Ah,
William in German. Wilhelm. Wilhelm.
something like that. Wilhelm?
Yeah, Wilhelm Röpke. Röpke.
Ah, ah,
E, an E,
hope.
right? And then there are two dots over the O, like the Germans
Ah,
do. Yes, there we go.
German.
Yes, there we go.
Is he Austriac or German?
No, he's German. He's German.
German.
And he was
Uh,
Protestant, but very interested and supportive of Catholic social thought.
Professor, you spoke about the dynamite, the fishing, and I just could remember about the ROC, no, in Central Asia, when the communists from Soviet Union got all the water that was there to make cotton. I think down in Uzbekistan, if I'm not mistaken, and the the that internal sea that was there for 2,000 years from that community's years, that now the generations just gone, no, by maximization of profit in a communist society.
Yeah.
It's something that
Yes. Well, yes. The Soviet Union or communism and China, they're sometimes called state capitalism. It's a form of exploitative system, but just run by the political party, by the Communist Party. So But there are positive examples. There is a Nobel Prize winner for economics. Actually, the first woman to win the Nobel Prize is Elinor Ostrom. So Elinor is Elinor, Elinor,
Eleanor.
Elinor Ostrom, Ostrom. And she studied how groups of people over centuries have been sharing the use of common goods like fishing grounds and especially water. And she broke that dichotomy between either it's run by the government or it's individualistic. And she discovered that there are groups who are neither government nor individuals, but communities who have been respectful of the resource, have rules which they must abide by. They're sanctioned by society, by the other members of that group, and they have been able to conduct sustainable grazing, water use, and fishing grounds over a long period of time. So that's very encouraging that even though we are egoists or selfish due to our fallen nature, that we can also use our reason to do what is best for all.
The I came from Catholic country. Brazil is a Catholic country, and for as I was when I was younger, it was more common the education where the high school, the elementary school, it was either public, like a run foreign state, or Catholics school.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them you have to pay. Another ones was more for scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
And in these 30 years, now even the Catholic schools have become kind of profit ruled in some case. This idea that or we have liberalism and just the profit orientated enterprises or state rule. This the dichotomia, I don't know in English, but this
Yes, dichotomy. Mm-hmm.
this bipolar stuff that or you are on liberalism or you are just in social orientated by like Marxism ideals or other. It's something that is being we are losing this. I if I can say there is idea that's not it's not my idea to speak about politics here, but political economy, like the normative part of economy, is a bit linked with it. But this idea that even people that wanted to be more linked to Catholic thoughts are falling to the liberalism. That liberalism is a heresy as well, no, for Catholic thought. So how the modern institutions of market like banks, interest, usury, how the Catholic thoughts see it now in 2026, how the public debt, cryptocurrency, everything for speculation. It's difficult to buy a house in big centers because you have investment funds that they are owner of papers and it make them owner of property. How Catholic Church see limits on liberalism as well. And as this audience, we have a lot of people that work in financial market, people that invest in financial funds and stocks. Uh, can I ask you, Professor, to tell us how Catholic Church see three special things: speculation in stock market, the difference between interest and usury, and the problem of savings and consumism.
Mhm. Right. So, your first question was the speculation in stocks. Is that what you're saying? Is that
Yeah,
your
yeah,
first
stock
question?
market,
Okay.
stock
Right.
markets, and as well in
Yes.
houses, apartments, land.
Yes. So, the wish of Catholic social teaching is a so-called diffused ownership. So, starting with the first social encyclical, Rerum Novarum, in 1891, uh, the popes have been saying that their vision is that many people have independence for their families. So we don't really want that there be very few extremely rich people and the rest is very poor and dependent on them. We want that families be self-reliant and have this freedom. It's very important for democracy. Even Aristotle already said a democracy requires a large middle class of people who can without fear express their opinion, because democracy is about saying what you think and not being uh, uh, forced to submit out of material need. Okay, so having said that, the stock company is a great invention. You can compare it to the invention of a plow. You can dig up a field with your own hands or with a shovel, right? But you won't get very far. With a plow and oxen, you can plow a large field, right? So we need technological progress. And the stock company was a means to pool large financial resources that you need to accomplish great projects. Okay. Now, of course, everything which is good can be abused, and we are now in a situation where the increases in the stock market are way beyond the real economic growth. So that is a reason for concern. Um, on the other hand, you're very right to mention that we have these funds that buy up houses and rent them out and so on, and that makes it impossible for families to um, uh, acquire their house. On the other hand, these funds sometimes, or many of these funds, contain the investment of old people who are retired and expect their pensions to be paid out. So we are in a very tricky situation where it is difficult to uh, do the right thing, or do something ideal. So again, beware of extreme solutions. It's usually the middle, the prudent decision that is important in this, right? So what would that be? It would be a conversion, yeah? Making sure that uh, things are taxed, right? That the burden of taxation is equally distributed, and that those who can pay more have to pay more, right? And that there are incentives to save and to not spend money senselessly. And that leads me to the second question: the difference between interest and usury, right? So nowadays, interest is defined as the price for liquidity. So anybody who lends money to someone else foregoes the possibility of using the money himself or herself, and that has a price. You also will get money back later. There's inflation. So your money in a year will be worth less than it is worth now. So that also has to be paid for. And finally, there's the risk that the person who has taken the money from you will not be able to pay back. So you have a default risk that needs to be covered by a price, and we call that interest. Okay. Usury, in contrast, is when you have disproportionate interest, when somebody makes use of the situation of distress and need of the person who needs to borrow money and says, well, if you want to have this money, you can have it, but you must pay uh, and hundreds of percent of interest, or or a very high interest rate that is not the usual interest rate for that term for which the money is loaned. Okay. Um, Now, in the tradition of the church and in the tradition of Christianity, the church used to forbid any form of interest, right? Any form of interest was forbidden. That is because we lived in an agricultural society in which, when you took a loan, it was to survive. And so the church said, if somebody comes to you and asks for a loan, what you should do is to just give it to him as a gift. If you don't want to do that, that's fine, but then don't charge them money on top of the principal. Okay, so but that teaching changed over time in a commercial society where merchants who gave money as a loan lost business opportunities because of that. And so that was when the church made this distinction between money and capital. And this already took place in the 13th century. Interestingly enough, in the Franciscan school of ethics. Okay, so it's an insight that is very important also for us when it comes to taking on debt. So especially with credit cards, they are very dangerous. They're very useful, but they can be very dangerous because you think I can just live beyond the limits of my income, and then people take on debt which they will not be able to pay back, right? So there's a difference between investment, which can be investment in a house, in a car, in your studies, in necessary machines or objects, that tools that make you more productive and therefore will increase your income later on, and just mere consumption that is just luxury or just something for fun that will not make you more productive. Okay, so that is a very important distinction. In the Bible we read, beware of debt, because the debtor is about to become the creditor's slave, right? So in antiquity, if you could not pay back, you had to either give your children or yourself into slavery of the creditor. Okay, so for at least 7 years, so okay, so that's that distinction. And what was the third question you had?
The idea of speculation in I think you did it here because it
Okay,
was
okay,
savings and consumption. Like
okay, okay.
if
Yeah.
if the
Uh,
person is not
yeah. So, these economic expressions like speculation, liberalism, capitalism, socialism, uh, they're very dangerous because we always have to ask, what are you talking about, right? So if you say liberalism, What do you mean? Okay, so it can mean um, doing whatever you want. Okay, libertarianism we would rather call that. Okay,
Mhm.
that is not what the church teaches at all. Okay, uh, but liberalism can also mean defending moral freedom, right? And in that sense, the church defends that. The church defends freedom as one of the values of Catholic social teaching, together with the truth. Freedom and truth, justice and charity are the values of Catholic social teaching, right? And the same is true with speculation. So speculation can be a tool to equalize the differences in time and geography and to level out prices. So if there's a shortage of grain somewhere, then the people who have grain will go and sell it there because they will make a profit. But by doing that, they will lower the prices because the shortage is reduced, right? Of course, you can also artificially induce a shortage, and that is bad. That is price gouging, right? That in the tradition of Catholic social thought and business ethics has always been a point that was condemned by the teachers. Okay, so and the same is with capitalism. What do you mean with capitalism? Do you mean free market economy, like in America? That would be the expression. Or do you mean advanced financial capitalism? Or do you mean exploitation? Right? Of course, exploitation is evil, and selfishness is evil. Right? So, but it's you. We always have to be very precise in our definitions.
Um, I am not. I study a bit the doctrine of the church about economy and the ethics, but I'm not a specialist, professor. But one thing that you may you may help me if I am thinking right or presuming right. The church is very careful about any comment of the of nowadays behavior of allocation of rules in the market, or if any interest is usury, or if any kind of if investment fund of investment is right or wrong, because the intention of who does it, the intention of the person that put money in stock market or in investment funds or in cryptocurrencies, the intention changes. Does the intention change what the morality of the economic behavior or no?
Of course, it does. So, as you know, there are three criteria for moral action: the moral object, the intention, and the circumstances. Okay, so the most important is the moral object, right? The moral object is the moral law, right? So, for instance, if you take something away from the owner, you have committed theft, right? So that
Mhm.
is the moral object, theft. Now, the intention might be good. You might be stealing because you want to help someone else. Uh, uh, but that intention, that good intention, does not make the moral object good. So good intentions do not sanctify bad means. Okay, so so for the action to be good, all three have to be good: the object, the intention, and the circumstances. The right place, the right time, the right means. Okay, in order to be bad, one of the three is it's enough that one of the three is bad, right? So if you do something which is good, like you give alms, you help someone, but you do it out of vanity, then that action is not good anymore. Okay, so but still, when we talk about Catholic social ethics, we are trying to organize the society. So we are not thinking about how moral or immoral are the individual actions, but what should the rules be for the functioning of a society? So you can compare it with a soccer game,
Mhm.
okay, where the individual players can commit a foul and then they get punished. But from time to time, the FIFA uh, reflects on changing the rules. And so, what we do in Catholic social thought is what should the rules be for the functioning of the system, right? So, um, and of course, that has to take into consideration the Ten Commandments and the moral teaching that defend the human person.
I see. Because of the problem of the morality in economy, sometimes like I'm economic. I study economy, and I work in a bank, like an example. And I can see that the bank that I work give the strategy of business is to give loans to people that maybe have no capacity to pay fully, and they make a lot of profit with a renegotiation or this kind of would say predatorial business. As a person that works in with financial markets, how the person should behave, should try to, because some people really get affected for this kind of or if you work in a kind of there's a lot of new kind of jobs that are immoral for themselves, like platforms in internet that work with very that everyone knows that it is immoral, but work in the back office, not to be in the camera or not to be the person that do immorality, but work in the back office, even just being the IT master of that kind of website, or being the economist that works in a bank that makes usury, or what is the limit me as a simple worker? How can I behave in this world with some economic anti-ethical risk?
Well, that is a very uh, difficult question. Okay, uh, so uh, the principle is you must never do anything that is unethical. Uh, so you must not lie. You must not commit fraud. So when you work as a bank employee, you have to abide by the ethical code of your bank. I think nowadays every bank has an ethical code or should have, and there are international rules and even oaths that you can you can take, or some institutions require it for ethical behavior. You There are laws, right? And you if you are forced by your leadership, by the management, to commit something unethical, that is clearly unethical, then it's better to leave that job than to commit that. And it's even in your own interest to do that in the long run. Okay. Now, those situations, thank God, are rare. Uh, it is more the feeling, am I working in a system that is kind of making use of the poor? So I don't know. It depends on the circumstances you're in. Um, in general, however, uh, banks are a very important institution in every nation. So banks are a service. They are so important because they allow us to have liquidity. And if they are managed well, they offer a real service to the economy. It's like the beating heart, the money, liquidity, it's called liquid because it's the blood of the economy. And without it, nothing would work. Everything would stop. So a drying up of liquidity is a heart attack of the economy. So, but of course, as always, if you have a blood poisoning, then that is lethal for the economy as well. So that is the big responsibility of banks to uh, resist the temptation to make easy profits. And even in their own interest, people are not dumb. Think of the example of the stick of dynamite in a lake. You might make a short term profit, but in the long term, you are dead. You are out of the market. You will pay so many fines or you will go bankrupt uh, if you are not really at the service of your clients.
So, Professor, we can say so, if I understood correctly, the idea that nowadays the financial markets are, of course, there is exceptions, but in average, they follow the kind of ethics, even because regulations, or because their own markets need it. Because if they don't follow, soon they will pay penalties or lose clients. And by average, most of the financial markets and banks are following kind of ethics. So it's not I would not like to say sin, but it's not a ethical risk by itself to work in financial markets.
No, no. It's an honorable profession. However, the reality is that uh, money is very sticky. You can get tempted easily. Okay, don't forget Judas among the apostles was the one who had the money. So
Yes.
it's always a good reminder to be especially careful, when you deal with money. Transparency is fundamental. You have to be aware you are just a steward. You have to be accountable, and you have to always evaluate your dealings. And yep, that is the challenge for the individual. For the regulators, the challenge is to build a correct architecture of finance to make sure that the financial institutions have no incentive to make money off the losses of their clients. So if moral hazard must be avoided, and that is the responsibility of the regulator to make sure that that does not happen.
Perfect, Professor. It is very. Uh, I have a. We are almost finished. It's 43 minutes. I think you
Mhm.
have a busy day. S- so one more final question, Professor, about the maximization of common good.
Mhm.
Uh, so the state itself uh, has to be careful about the central plan, and but uh, should the because some economists like Keynesian in school, and there is the most liberal Austrian school of economics, Mises, Hayek, and um, economist as as a person that can offer some solutions for state or center or plans of in a finance minister, depends the country. Should can the economist offer some like a new deal offer or fiscal spend more money from the government to do some um, investment from the government, or should the solutions for common good, the economic solutions, be focused on people and not in the state, not like
Mm.
a, the let me try to be clear. uh, we should try to make a development not from the government but by the normal market, or the church has no opinion about it.
So the church doesn't offer technical solutions. It doesn't say, this is the one solution for all the problems. It gives principles, okay? So, however, it is very clear that it is every institution in society must do its part. And the government has an incredibly important role in business, especially through the rule of law. The rule of law. It is fundamental for trust. And without trust, there is no business. Trust is the social capital of any business. And so, if your contracts are not enforced because the judges are corrupt, if your private property titles are not secure, no bank will give you credit on collateral, on mortgage, on that property because they can't be sure that the titles are there. So it's crippling, you know. So the government has this from this is the first task. Now, whether there should be like stimulus investments, yes, of course, you know, the infrastructure, roads, bridges, public buildings, those are fundamental. Those are really, these are the internet, uh, a functioning communication. Those are beyond the scope and the possibilities of an individual. They have to be built by the government, or by the common good, by society in common, you know. And so should some businesses be nationalized? I don't think so. You know, it there are too many conflicts of interest. Why is it a given that a public functionary is better than a private one? We're all the same humans, you know. I think it would it in the end. I think business should be business, and the government should be government. Uh, uh, um, a small but strong state, you know, and the uh, government can just tax, but it doesn't generate revenue. So government has to
Mhm,
be very careful not to take too much tax, because that would
mhm,
ruin the incentive of entrepreneurs. Uh, Entrepreneurs need very little incentive because they have enough drive of their own. You know, like you, Leonardo. You know, doing this series. Uh, what you need is that people don't tax you for it, that they don't give you restrictions, that they don't control you, they don't censor you, you know. And the same is true for every entrepreneur. uh, what they need is rule of law and freedom, and of course, tax. You know, you have to contribute to the common good. You have to help pay for all the things you yourself are using, the internet, traffic. You know, um, the legal system. So that has to be in balance.
thank you very much, professor. And I see the difference between America and the rest of Latin America when you say about this topic, because for us it is a bit not. For us, public investment is state ruled by historic. So it is very interesting, as we said in the beginning of the conversation, about be public, but some things not necessarily being this market rule. Thank you very much for this conversation. It was very interesting, very peaceful. This because of the questions about usury, about speculation, about liberalism, and this something that happens in the comments box time to time, Professor.
Mm-hmm.
People that sometimes are concerned about it. There is some conversation, online conversation, people writing about it in Brazil, and it's necessary to have some calm about it, I think, for our audience. Thank you very much. Professor, would you like to state something else?
No, thank you for having me. And I think now the big concern is world peace. I think that is a big problem for commerce and for freedom is the interruption caused by war and the great suffering. So I hope we come to our senses.
Yeah. I will say just a few words in Portuguese, Professor,
Uhum.
if you don't mind. Pessoal, obrigado por virem até aqui. Curtam, compartilhem, considerem tornar-se membros e muito obrigado. Fiquem com Deus.